All right, so let's talk about isolation levels, right? So as we were looking at earlier, right, we took a look at the various things that could go wrong, right? If you let multiple threads just run around wildly, right, and you don't try to serialize somehow and sequence what happens first and who gets to go first and whatnot. So now that we've seen the different problems that might happen, let's take a look at how we might go about fixing that, right? So first, we've agreed and we have identified that there is a need for serializing. There is a need for isolating these threads, right, so that they don't all run at the same time, right? So let's real quick look at the problems. The first one is what we call a dirty read. And so here's an example on how that might happen. So a dirty read, here's an example where you have someone is reading information from a users, and they're reading the age, and they read a 20. They read that the student is 20 years old. Okay. Now, presumably, if reads were repeatable, we mean to say that within my transaction, as anytime I decide to make a read, I would always get the same information. But let's cause here a dirty read, meaning we're not enforcing this desirable attribute, right? Let's say we read and the students, and we get 20 years old. Now, transaction 2 is going to update this age to be 21 for that same person, for that same user. So later on, we read again. Notice that the update hasn't yet committed. We updated, but we haven't yet committed it, right? So it's only temporary. We can always change our minds and just roll back that change, and it will not be made permanent. Okay. Having made this change, this update, we might decide not to make it permanent yet because we might need to change other things, right? We might say, well, you're 21, now you can drive, now you can do this, that, and the other based on your age group, right? And notice here we're allowing transaction 1 to go in there and do a read. Now this read we're allowing this transaction to come in and read the 21, which is a temporary value, right? And it's not yet a permanent value, because we can always decide to roll back and say, well, no, not really. It's next month, right? Not this month. The birthday is next month, not this month, right? So we might roll back and say, no, it's not really 21. So this select statement for the transaction 1 might go off and make some decisions that are based on data that is not true. So this is what we mean that we are allowing uncommitted reads, right? So we call this dirty reads, right? So let's take a look at another one, which is called a non-repeatable read. Okay, and so these are almost identical to one another. They're very, very similar, right? Whereas the dirty read is allowing the reading of a value that hasn't yet been committed, right? That's one problem. We're allowing somebody to read data that is temporary. A non-repeatable read means that you are reading two values, but they're different, but they're both been committed, right? Meaning you make a read, and you look at the value, and the value has been committed, right? And then you read it again, but it's also been committed, but the values are different. It says, well, how is that happening? And so here's an example, so here I read before an update, right? I read before an update. I read the value to be 20, and that's a correct value. And so the transaction is running. But also transaction 2 is also running. I first read the value and says 20, and then transaction 2 at the same time is running at the same time, and they update the age to be 21. They commit. Then I come in on transaction 1 and I read it again, and now it's 21 all of a sudden. It says, what happened here? Why did it change? How did it change, right? So we could fix this in different ways. We could have the, if the transaction would want repeatable reads, right? They want to be guaranteed that no matter how many times they read, they're always going to get the same value. They would have to run in an isolation layer saying, hey, I'm working with this age, okay? Nobody bother me, all right? If anybody comes in and reads it and is going to try and write to this age, stop, right? You're going to have to wait your turn. If I need to be able to read it several times and I wouldn't be guaranteed it's always the same value, right? I need to grab a semaphore or lock that record, or lock this this table, right, and not allow anybody else in here. Whereas in this one, for the dirty reads, what might happen is that the way to fix it might be that transaction 2 might need to have been updating a whole bunch of different things, and they want to make sure that nobody reads this information that is stale. So they might grab a lock on the information that they're updating, right? That means that anybody who might want to read the information, they're going to be locked out, right? And they're going to have to wait their turn. So we can fix it in two different ways, right? Depending on what is it that we want to guarantee, either the repeatable read, or we're going to make sure that we want to fix the dirty reads. And we'll see that in a minute. Finally, phantom reads, right? Where there might be records that all of a sudden appear, even though we are doing different select statements, and every time we read differently, we get different records, right? So that means that somebody's inserting data that is changing our select statement. So for instance, here we have a select statement, and I'm retrieving users that are in a particular age group between 10 and 30 years old, and I do it one read first, and I get 10 users. But then later on, while another transaction is running, and they're inserting new users into the table, right, with exactly within the age group that we are interested in, right? They insert Bob here with 27 years old, right? That means that I do one read and I get 10 users. I do another read and I get 11 users. What's going on, right? Now again, depends. If my logic depends on the fact that it should be the same, then I cannot allow this to happen, right? I need to select an isolation layer that would deal with these phantom reads, right? That would stop these phantom reads.